Over 160 million different Americans watched college football during the 5-month 2018-2019 college football season, according to the Nielsen TV ratings. However, over the past 2.5 months, the total live collegiate sports viewership has been zero. The lack of collegiate sports since the outbreak of COVID-19 this spring has had monumental consequences on collegiate athletic departments and has left many wondering what the future holds. The Wall Street Journal, in an interview with Texas A&M athletic director Ross Bjork, discussed the impacts of no football or football without fans, as well as the hurdles to overcome getting fans back in the stands for football in the fall. Many schools have already taken action anticipating a reduction in revenue from football in the fall, as shown by ESPN. The Los Angeles Times has compared the complicated road to bringing football back in the fall between the SEC and Pac-12 conferences. Kyle Field, packed with over 102,000 fans, can get as loud as 117 decibels and register on the Richter scale during Texas A&M home football games. But there is uncertainty to whether or not these sounds will be heard in the fall of 2020. According to the Wall Street Journal, ticket sales account for about 32% of all collegiate revenue. According to a 2017 NCAA report, football accounts for over half of Texas A&M's athletic revenue. The report also states that football ticket sales bring in about 90% of revenue from all athletic ticket sales at Texas A&M. In a recent Wall Street Journal interview with Ross Bjork, the Texas A&M athletic director, the challenges surrounding having fans back in the stands for football in the fall are discussed. Bjork stated that football revenue drives the athletic department, and therefore the push for football in the fall is in full swing. The Texas A&M Athletic Department used an independent company to study the seating in Kyle Field adhering to social distancing protocol. In this study, Field Box 8, for example, which can normally hold 340 fans, would be limited to 40, or roughly 12% of capacity with social distancing in effect. Using this estimate, Kyle Field would be restricted to about 12,000 fans in the fall, less than the average attendance dating back to 1927. Bjork said that Texas A&M has around 65,000 season ticket holders and usually around 35,000 students at each home game. The exact plan on who would be let in if these numbers were less are not exactly known yet. The article also talked about issues that would be present with this practice in the fall. To list a few, it would be hard to enforce social distancing inside the stadium. It would be difficult to enforce social distancing at tailgates on campus. There could be choke points inside the stadium that could be hot spots for COVID-19, and concession stands and bathrooms are questions that are still unanswered. In a recent ESPN article, the impacts of COVID-19 that have already been had on collegiate athletic departments have been discussed. For example, 5 collegiate athletic departments, Cincinnati, Central Michigan, Akron, East Carolina, and Bowling Green, have already had to cut collegiate sports due to the COVID-19 outbreak and budget cuts that go along with it. Many schools have requested that the NCAA lower the 16 varsity sport limit for teams to be qualified as Division I, as their budgets shrink and they need to cut sports to remain above water. Most collegiate coaches and staffs have already made pay cuts in order to keep their departments above the waterline, the rising waterline, to keep operating throughout this pandemic. The Mid-American Conference has already canceled 8 different sports championship tournaments and cost-saving measures. ESPN estimates that $4 billion would be lost just by Power 5 football teams this fall if there's not a complete college football season with fans. This would be on average $62 million per each of those 65 teams. These projected losses are actually conservative too, as they don't include potential losses in media revenue, conference distributions, donations, and revenue from corporate partnerships. Public schools that are Power 5 schools have on average made nearly half of their total operating revenue from football, with about 14% coming from just ticket sales. Of 130 college football programs, only Georgia and Texas A&M would make money without football being played. Comparatively, about half of college football programs were profitable last season. Even more concerning is that less than half of college football athletic departments have the reserves to make it through next season without football being played. In a recent Los Angeles Times article, it was brought up that the Los Angeles County, home to the USC Trojans and UCLA Bruins, recently extended their stay-at-home orders until August. The California State University system has already moved all classes to online for the fall of 2020. The Los Angeles Times interviewed Greg Skanke, the Southeastern Conference Commissioner, and Larry Scott, the Pac-12 Conference Commissioner. When talking to Greg Skanke, 13 of 14 SEC schools have stated that they plan to return students to campus in the fall, paving the way for the return of SEC football. The Pac-12, however, is looking more grim, with California, Oregon, and Washington schools less optimistic for traditional in-person class in the fall. The Los Angeles Times points to politics as a major player in the return to football, with the conservative South ambitious to return to football, as where the more liberal coasts are holding back as of right now. Scott said he was optimistic that the West Coast would be open and football would be back in August. College football is regulated by conference commissioners and university presidents rather than the NCAA, as most other sports are. This means some conferences could play while others remain sidelined for the season. The question has been asked whether or not conferences in Red America, such as the SEC and Big 12, will wait to play for all other conferences, or will they just start as regularly scheduled on their own? Some schools, such as Texas A&M, are already planning ways to get as many fans in stadiums as possible in the fall. Other schools are less ambitious to return, posing questions as to whether or not football may be regionalized in the fall. Many schools, particularly smaller market schools, are already having to cut sports in order to keep their programs above the rising waterline, that is, the raising costs related with the COVID-19 outbreak. COVID-19 has taken a massive toll on college sports, and many people are wondering what is left to come. Collegiate football brings in more revenue than the next 35 profitable college sports combined. Without college football, can we survive?